After the release of FNAF 4, Scott decided that the best course of action for the franchise was to take a little break from the scares. This far into the series, it becomes effortless to forget that Scott Cawthon is not originally a horror game maker. By the release of FNAF 4, Scott was 37 years old. He had been a horror game maker for less than a year at this point. The first game was released on August 8th, 2014, and the fourth game came out on July 23rd, 2015. Releasing that many games in such a short amount of time is bound to cause someone to get just a tiny bit burnt out from the franchise. Despite this rampant success, this was not the career that Scott had in mind. Some part of it, deep inside, started to get an itch. It already started to show itself in the game's shift to narrative, but that wasn't enough. From the perspective of a creator, I can tell you personally that the things you're most proud of always seem to be the things that don't take off. The original Sit and Survive, The Desolate Hope, and even Chipper and Sons were games that came from his soul, and clearly that itch to make something true to himself was starting to take him over. And so, a game would be released on January 21st, 2016, that would show the world a side of Scott unseen since the very first game. Everyone, say hello to FNAF World. Five Nights at Freddy's Go is a real-time action RPG spin-off game with a huge cast of characters with appearances from FNAF 1 to FNAF 4. Plus Halloween update. This game would take a similar style to the games he made pre-FNAF, with returning characters such as the OGs, the Toys, Swiss Cheese, the Wizards, the Phantoms, the Nightmares, Brish, and a bunch of paid DLC. The overworld is enormous, having 6 separate areas plus Hell on Earth. And we can't forget the Bat Caves. The overall story, while it doesn't necessarily mean much, it only really amounts to be a teaser for Sister Location. When you first start the game, you are introduced to... Wait, wasn't this supposed to be 3D? I mean, we saw it in 3D in the trailer, but I mean, what the hell, man? Oh, Jesus! The battle system is turn-based, and while it was meant to be exactly that, it does have a bit more limitations than most RPGs would initially have. The biggest limitation is that the UI likes to make you wait the exact same amount of time as the GTA 6 release before you can choose the abilities. God damn it, Rockstar. While that may be a bit of an over-exaggeration, it still takes a very long time just for you to get your turn with one character. Also, the game has a lot of enemies in the mix, such as PvZ. And oh yeah! Just to name a few. There is also a multitude of bosses in this game, such as Bubba, Security Owl, the Eye of Sauron, and of course, Chica's motherfucking rainbow. Anyway, as it turns out, the overall graphics for the original release was falsely advertised to be less of a 3D RPG and nothing more as a better excuse for E.T. from the Atari. While the overworld was in the Atari style similar to the minigames from FNAF 2 through 4, everything else is technically in the promised 3D art style. During the Steam release days of FNAF World, it was very frowned upon by fans for this reason. And, overall, it had an unfinished nature compared to the GameJolt version we have now. After a couple of months or so, the Halloween update released, adding the paid DLC and a new area to the game that provided a few minigames that unlocked the new additional characters either by simply beating the minigame or with very specific challenge applied to the game. Eventually, you get to fight the bane of this game's existence, bringing an end to the new content. God, I hate this remote. Anyway, FNAF World wouldn't have any more updates after this, but surprisingly had a lot of replayability when it came to the amount of endings to the game. And speaking of the endings, there are a multitude of them. 8 in total to be specific. Some are harder to get than others, the hardest two being the Scott/Anim Dude ending, which you have to fight the creator of the game, and Chica's Magic Rainbow ending, which shows a teaser for Sister Location revealing the voice of Circus Baby. Despite this being Scott's temporary escape from making horror games, he does admit the time of making the spin-off wasn't the best outcome he could have gone for while having enough reasons to make it. Scott was usually prone to making games relatively fast, given how each FNAF entry around that time would release months apart.
You know, and that's obvious to me now, but like I'm saying, you know, like I was saying, I wasn't thinking completely rationally at the time, you know, and whereas, like I was saying, Five Nights at Freddy's 1 was the right game at the right time, FNAF World, that wasn't a good time for it to be made because I was already in the rhythm of making games that were coming out not too far apart from each other. I was making them pretty fast, and that's what people were wanting and expecting, and that's what I was wanting to do anyway. I'm not, blaming people for wanting that. That's what I had created, that pattern, and I was happy with that. I liked making games really fast, but that was just a really poor decision of a game to try to make fast.
As seen in the Scott/Anim Dude ending, after defeating Scott himself, he tells the player of his supposed feelings towards his fanbase, and how he was weary of it never being enough for them. However, those feelings were proven false in the forum that he posted claiming it was a joke and all for good fun. But was it really? It had to be possible that he had some sort of resentment towards the series, although not showing it to his audience. That very resentment eventually led to the creation of the first game, sparking the light of the fanbase. While he wasn't content with being the horror guy, he still, however, made it very clear that he was a storyteller, and that he had a story to tell.
Five Nights at Freddy's 6th location was released on October 7th, 2016, and this fifth entry in the franchise would become the biggest mark of significant changes in the franchise during this time. This is where FNAF started to move more into science fiction. Scott was very familiar with the sci-fi genre to the point where he got into trouble when he came to the FNAF fanbase. 6th location was no exception, giving the animatronic group in this game a more glossy and new look compared to previous entries.
I think the sister location characters are probably were my favorite ones to model. I really like the metallic kind of look. I always kind of tend to lean sci-fi, which has actually gotten me in trouble a couple times with this franchise. Anytime I try to lean sci-fi, which is my natural inclination, people are like, hey, whoa, this is a horror story, and then I have to somehow try to guide it back, and rightfully so. The first game's a horror movie; it's not sci-fi. But yeah, I don't know. I wanted it to be sci-fi. I wanted it to look really sleek and polished, and I really enjoyed modeling all of those characters. Yeah, like I said, I think those are probably some of my favorite characters of the series.
You can see how advanced they are just by comparing their endoskeletons. This would also be the era of FNAF where voice acting was now exponentially more important to the franchise, starting from this point onward. One of the biggest examples of this now implemented voice acting is of a character you meet at the beginning of the game, known as Hand Unit, working as an optimistic yet mechanical voice program to help guide you through your tasks for the night. Or so we thought. Then there's the character who ends up not only taking charge of instructions for the rest of the game onward, but also is the biggest part of the game, Circus Baby.
I don't recognize you. You are new. I remember this scenario. However, it's a strange thing to want to do, to come here.
Circus Baby is the first animatronic in the entire franchise to ever verbally communicate with the player. Needless to say, Baby would end up leaving one of the biggest first impressions that a character has ever left in the history of the franchise. As for the other animatronics, they do speak as well, but are a bit less sentient than Baby. For example, in Night 2, you are tasked to crawl through a long room to get to the other side while remaining silent when Ballora is playing her music box, only for you to have to play a game of chicken with Freddy, who is only verbally communicating that there is a new friend to greet, and that you must use the voice of Bon Bon to verbally manipulate him into going back to his original spot, allowing the player the opportunity to reset the connections of the power system. When crawling back the way you came, you hear a voice call out to you. She brushes off the noise of your footsteps, leading to the end of a successful night. The voices of these characters do a very good job of giving the player a sense of false welcome. It gives the player the idea that even though Baby is telling us throughout the game that she needs our help, despite the behavior of the others giving us the exact opposite response, and that feeling would only grow stronger each night, leading to the biggest gut punch of the game, Night 5. Night 5 begins as per usual with nightly chores. Once you head to the main entryway to each room and check on Ballora and Foxy, you instead see silhouettes of Oh God. You can also see that the mask hanging above the ventway to Baby's room is now gone, immediately giving the player a sign that shit is about to hit the fan. As you make your way through Funtime Auditorium, you meet up with Baby again, at least what's left of her anyway. She explains that she is broken, and all the bad stuff must be destroyed. But if you look closely behind her, you can see a few swaying wires surrounding her. She says that you must enter a code to retrieve her data card, so she can continue to communicate with you for the rest of the night. Once that code is entered, you get the data card and are told to go back to Funtime Auditorium and listen to her directional instructions, with those said directions leading you back to the scooping room that you were at in the night prior. Baby then explains how every member has been to the scooping room and that they all have been destroyed. As she continues to speak to you, you start to see a new animatronic in the window. This amalgamation of eyes and wires is Ennard, which is the fusion of all 4 animatronics you have seen throughout your time in the game. Ennard, through Baby's voice, starts speaking as if they are a collective hive mind and how they need to get out, and that the only way they can do so is by looking like you. You are then scooped by the scooper, allowing Ennard to crawl into your skin and leave the facility. The final cutscene then reveals what has become of us, and the game ends. As unfortunate as it may sound that this is the canon ending to the game, which is proven by brightening up the screen during the credits sequence, however, there is a single alternate ending to this game. But to get to that ending, you first need to complete the Circus Baby minigame, in which you have to get from point A to point B, while making all of the children you come across happy by feeding them cupcakes. But what the game didn't tell you, however, is that this is not the case of beating it. What you actually have to do is do everything mentioned previously, but also carry out the ice cream you get back to point A and give it to a little girl before the time runs out. Once you finally manage to get the job done, the little girl walks up to you, and with a surprising turn of events, Baby then snatches the girl into her stomach, killing her. The next step is to hop back into Night 5, but instead of following Baby's instructions in the Funtime Auditorium, you do the exact opposite and go forward and right instead, leading you to a door to a room that you couldn't access beforehand, being the private room. Unlocking this room now begins the final step of getting this ending, surviving till 6 AM while keeping Ennard away from your office. Seems pretty simple, right? Well, yes. Except the power now runs on 2 half-dead AAA batteries instead of the grand total of the 3 fully charged AAA batteries you were working with in the first game. You also have to be aware of sound cues. This is your main way of telling where exactly Ennard is lurking. Ennard then starts to question why you didn't trust them, but after a while, Ennard's voice then changes to the voice of a little girl, similar to the voice that you hear before every night. This girl is also mentioned by Baby in Night 3 if you go back to Baby's room and hide underneath the desk, as you do in Night 2. Needless to say, this was a very difficult challenge for a non-canon ending. Once you finally do defeat Ennard, you are rewarded with your exotic butters and the popcorn as you finally get to watch the finale of your sitcom. And then Ennard just kind of stumbles in and is like, "Hey buddy old pal, can I watch hot sitcoms with you?" And then the game ends. The end. And you would probably think that there wouldn't be anything else to this game, but lo and behold, there is more. A couple of months later, the game was updated, adding a custom night mode to the game, bringing in returning characters while also bringing in some new faces. Those faces are a little bit Yendo, Electrobab, and Bonnet. The custom nights take place in the same location as the one in the alternate route of Night 5. There are also 4 sets of difficulty for each selective preset: easy, normal, hard, and very hard. And if you think you can handle the challenge of each preset on very hard, you can unlock special in-between cutscenes, revealing events after the real ending of the game, showing the transformative process of the protagonist's body slowly decaying into a mangled and purple mess. Eventually, it is revealed that Ennard was catching on that they will have to go into hiding again, but they let themselves out from their host, and somehow, against all odds, the host survives. After completing the final challenge, you unlock the final cutscene, but instead of what was shown previously, you are given a cutscene of the aftermath of FNAF 3, along with the voiceover and reveal of the protagonist's true identity being Michael Afton. Michael speaks to his father, William Afton, saying that he found his sister Elizabeth and that he put her back together, and then explains that something is wrong with him, that he should be dead, but he isn't. The last thing he says to his father is that he is going to find him. The cutscenes end with the reveal that Springtrap survived the fire at Fazbear Fright. And for that, Sis Location is truly over. It's safe to say that Sis Location was the most immense FNAF game at the time in terms of narrative and content, while also finally rolling into the lore aspect of the franchise. However, this would become the catalyst for certain questions that have yet to be answered, and this upcoming game would be the one to answer almost all of the franchise's mysteries.
Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator was released on December 4th, 2017, and to everyone's surprise, it's just a free, simple simulation game in which you make pizzas and throw them at every hungry child you could see from a 5-foot radius. As you continue throwing the pizzas to the kids, it starts to get a bit more tedious, now having a shadow clone of your player character blocking your pathway to throwing the pizzas. You have to maneuver around this faker and throw the pizzas whenever distracted, and then eventually... What the fuck? Yes, as it turns out, this ended up being one of Scott's biggest trolls yet. This simulator game ended up being the secret 6th entry in the FNAF franchise, taking pretty much every YouTube Let's Player by surprise.
What the heck?
You were then promptly given instructions by a mysterious man in a cassette recording instructing you to salvage the animatronic in front of you, while also keeping it under the obligations of paragraph 4. But we'll get to that later. You are required to do audio prompt tests to progress the process of the animatronic salvaging. But before you get to finish the salvage...
Begin audio prompt in 3,
2, 1.
After your salvage gets interrupted, you are given a message by your helpful friend, Tutorial Unit, which is a nice homage to the hand unit from Sister Location. As it turns out, this actually is a pizzeria simulator, where you can customize your restaurant, add decorations/attractions to draw customers, and accept sponsorships for profit. Please don't accept the sponsorships, just trust me on this one. You are also given a pretty decent catalog of stuff you can add to your pizzeria. You even get a catalog of animatronics to put on stage. After you have made your purchases, you can place your items in whatever position the pizzeria will allow. After everything is in place, you have the option to playtest certain games. Some of those games are mostly for fun and comedic effect, and some have secret lore behind them. After you are done setting things up in your pizzeria, you can then start on your nightly tasks to help maintain the conditions of your pizzeria. While completing said tasks one by one, you will have to check on the vents to your left and right to prevent anything from jumping out. After you have completed your tasks for the night, you are then taken back to the room you were at the beginning of the game, and you are again given the task of salvaging the animatronic or throwing it out and forfeiting the payment that will come out of it later. After finishing the salvage, you can then use the money you've earned to continue to playtest games and also dig deeper into what secrets some of these games have and repeat these same steps till Saturday. However, every salvage will end up adding more threats to you during the night segments of the game. There are a total of 4 threats in this game, those threats being Scrap Baby, William Afton, Molten Freddy, and Lefty. These animatronics will crawl into the vent system that leads into your office while doing the task you've done previously. This time around, you have to be a lot more quiet to hear who is approaching your office, while simultaneously playing sounds in other areas to draw them away. If you accept the sponsorship during the building phase, it'll prevent you from hearing who is approaching and could lead to you getting caught. While this may seem simple, you still have to do other tasks for the night. Doing some tasks makes a lot of noise, which makes it seem like a gamble to complete due to how fast certain animatronics move around. And they do get faster every night, so you are gonna need to keep an ear out to complete your tasks as quickly as possible. After completing the week, you can get 1 out of 7 endings or certificates you can get in the game. The bad ending puts you in the same area that you were in during the salvage minigames, but it plays a tape that you did not complete the requirements under paragraph 4 and that you are being terminated as a result. The insanity ending is given when you purchase the Egg Baby item and place it in your pizzeria. As you go to your office, you can click the blue button on the bottom of the monitor. If you do that, you're given a blueprint showing some schematics of creations by William Afton. A recording of the man on the cassette reveals the plan that he wants to lure back the animatronics to a single location to call them all back, as he says, and that is why the salvage minigame is so important. At the end of the log, you'll see some text on the bottom left corner that reads HRY 223, in which, if you have actually read the books, you would know the true identity of the voice behind the recording being Henry Emily. The Lore Keeper ending is given after you thoroughly playtest these 3 games: Midnight Motorist, Fruity Maze, and the Security Puppet. In Midnight Motorist, you need to move your car to the bottom of the screen at a certain point in the game, in which you will see a small gap in the barrier. Once you go down the gap, it will unlock a secret exploration segment in which you can visit 2 locations, those locations being a place called Junior's and a house. These locations provide vague and subtle context to the certain characters in the franchise. In Fruity Maze, you play as a little girl collecting as much fruit as you can with the assistance of power-ups before the time runs out. Each time your timer extends, you are flashed an image of a little girl that you wouldn't be familiar with unless you, again, read the books. And if you have, then you would know that this little girl's name is Susie. After playing the first time, you actually need to playtest the game twice over. When starting your 3rd playtest, you are greeted to what essentially looks like your state-of-the-art scary spaghetti, complete with blood trails and dead dogs. When your time gets extended, you see a flash of Susie again, but this time she is crying, and we can also see a very familiar figure leaning behind her. After the game is over, we are given an exchange in conversation from Mr. Afton to Susie. I won't get too deep into speculations about Susie, but as far as we know, Susie is essentially the murder victim who went on to possess Chica in the first game, revealing more of the lore surrounding the missing children's incident. The final game is the Security Puppet, and this game probably is the most simple one to find the secrets of. All you have to do is stop certain children from exiting the building, specifically ones with green bracelets. However, during your first 2 times playtesting, a child with a green bracelet never shows up. That is, until you playtested a 3rd time, we finally get our first child with a green bracelet, but it seems they already got out. Or from the looks of it, she's trying to get inside. We finally come out to play as the Security Puppet, but before we let the kid in, they fade away. We then go outside the building and figure out where the kid supposedly went. As we make our way to protect this child, the puppet starts to get damaged from the rain, and it starts to slow down. Once the child is found, it's too late. The child is dead, and all we can do is comfort them, and then the game ends. Essentially, this game is pretty much a retake on the Take Care to the Children minigame from FNAF 2. Revealing the origins of the animatronic that gave life to these kids in the first place. And again, if you have read the books, they would have revealed the name of the green bracelet child to be Charlotte or Charlie, but we'll get more into that later. After finding all the secrets of these 3 games, you have now gotten the ending. But there's one other ending that would end up being one of, if not the biggest lore drop in the entire franchise, the completion ending. To get this ending, you have to salvage every animatronic you are offered and survive the office section all the way till Saturday. Once you have completed your last shift, you are given a small talk from Scrap Baby that the job you have been given wasn't given to you for anything, and that it was a gift for them. What is single-handedly the most notorious moment in the entire series. In a nutshell, Henry monologues that he has built this labyrinth to keep the animatronics trapped inside and eventually burn everything down to the ground once the time was right, to end all the pain for good. You can see that this plan does in fact work, as we are given visuals of all the animatronics sealed inside waiting to be burned down, with the temperature slowly increasing over time, freeing all the souls and killing off William in the process, alongside yourself. Needless to say, this game has probably some of the hardest lines ever put in a FNAF game.
Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole.
He also mentions the presence of his daughter, which she is in control of the puppet, who is concealed inside the Lefty suit. With the restaurant completely burnt down, the souls are finally free from what we presume to be Afton's grasp, and Afton is finally getting what's coming to him. Getting to this point rewards you with the completion ending, And you can tell throughout the ending that Scott wanted this to be the last mainline FNAF game in the franchise. Upon the game's release, it was clear that Scott seemingly had no intention of continuing the story past this point, as everything reached a logical conclusion.
Well, no, there actually was reasoning behind it. It wasn't just to be a troll, okay? And the reasoning was kind of complicated, and it was not a very fun. That was not a fun year. I mean, that was a game that was born out of necessity, because I needed to kind of bring a conclusion to several events from the series. I worked on that game for a year in secret, all the while the fan base was, getting pretty agitated that, I wasn't talking to them and I wasn't working on anything. But I knew that was the way that it just had to be. It had to be this way. This game could not have a lot of hype behind it, because that wasn't the purpose. The purpose of it was not to make a lot of money. The purpose of it was not to build a lot of hype. It was just to resolve some plot points that people wanted to see. And so the result of that was me going into the dark for a year, and then just dropping a game, and there you have it. And even on the Steam store, it's not there to draw a bunch of attention to itself. It's using all the really simplest screenshots. That is truly there for just people who wanted to have kind of a resolution to some of the story.
From what was supposed to be a simple business management game, had so many webs and hidden secrets that stood on its own. As a solid conclusion to an iconic horror franchise, every FNAF game, as it bounds further into the future of the series, kept looking back. We would see again and again the real story behind those very first incidents. The bite, the murders, giving gifts, and giving life. But FNAF 4 goes all the way back, before Freddy, before even FNAF 1, and truly, Pizzeria Simulator really stands on its own as a concrete ending, and Scott really set out to make this the definitive ending, as he decided to develop one more custom night for the franchise.
First name Apollo, last name Comics, intros suck, let's go! Ultimate Custom Night was released on June 27th, 2018. And it was originally planned to release as downloadable content for Pizzeria Simulator, similar to how the Custom Night was added in future updates to Sister Location. However, due to the undertaking of such a task, Scott decided to spin it off into its own game.
I always knew that it was going to be a full-sized game. Originally, I guess at the very beginning, it was going to be an add-on to Pizzeria Simulator, but it was very soon afterwards that I realized, this is going to be just a full Five Nights at Freddy's experience. This just needs to be its own full game.
Ultimate Custom Night is built to be an epilogue, one last hurrah to the series that is Five Nights in Philadelphia. While FNAF 6 brought a close to the story of the games, Ultimate Custom Night brings a close to the old style of the series' gameplay. Being the 7th game,
FNAF WORLD!
It mirrors the 7th night from earlier titles by being a custom night for all of the games. After all, the tradition of the near impossibly hard 2020 mode was present in every single game except for Pizzeria Simulator. So, to make up for that absence, Scott gave the world his most grueling challenge yet. Just like the first game, he had no idea if it was even possible to beat. 20 mode! Let's go game! And with this mode came the return of nearly every animatronic from the mainline games, including the originals, Wizards, Nightmares, Phantoms, Rockstars, so many! You got Circus Baby, Springtrap, 6 Balloon Ball!
Oh my god, I don't...
Spaghetti 1 and 2! Electric Boogaloo! My son! And Jacko Chica, why are you here?
The flames of disaster!
Even animatronics like Funtime Freddy and the Biddy Babs, who wouldn't attack you, still watched you from the PNG image that was your office. This is Freddy Ventures Endgame, baby! Everyone is here and haunting you down! Jeez, why do I sound like Monty? And yet, 50-20 mode, most insanely hard challenge to grace the series with its presence. The night above the mother of all other nights.
You
was beaten within 2 weeks.
Oh my god! Oh my god! We did it! 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 We
20 mode done! Woo! Yes! Man, so many close runs. That feels good. Damn! Oh my god! Oh! Oh! Holy shit!
What a great achievement, am I right? But, you know, as great as it was, it meant that Five Nights at Freddy's, as we all knew it, was over. But wait, there's more if you count the secrets. For you see, many of the animatronics speak to you when they tear you from your mortal shell. Lovely, I know. These range from roasting you to their gamer rage to a voice that sounds all too familiar. And who could forget...
My friend.
Oh, there's more of these, by the way. However, some of these animatronics tell us about someone special. Someone who they call the one you should not have killed.
Greetings from the fire, and from the one you should not have killed.
I am remade, but not by you, by the one you should not have killed.
He's here and always watching, the one you shouldn't have killed.
Most likely, this refers to the face you can sometimes just barely see on the death screen, named Cassidy, the child spirit who possesses Golden Freddy. We also see the return of Old Man Consequences, a character originally from FNAF World. Usually he's just a nuisance who will lock you out of using your cameras from time to time. But if you make him the only one active in the game and set his difficulty level to 1, you return to the 4th layer deep. And if you listen close enough, you can hear an eerie, bit-crushed rumble. Editing this sound reveals it to be a distorted yell from William Afton, either crying for help or cursing the ones who sent him here. But where exactly is here? What's going on? Why are all the animatronics hunting you? Weren't they all burnt down in the last game's true ending? Well, except for Golden Freddy, I guess. Wait, if Golden Freddy is indeed the one you should not have killed, and all the other characters seem to serve them, then is this a prison for Afton? Is this Ultimate Custom Night his own personal hell, overseen by the one remaining soul who has yet to be freed? The final Easter egg seems to only reinforce this idea. By setting good old Goldie's level to 1 and everyone else's to 0, then buying a death coin and using it on the yellow bear we all know and love, you get to see something or someone new. This is Fredbear, and unlike the other animatronics, his voice lines are so muffled and warped that you can barely hear them in the first place. But decoding them confirms everything. Now you can say whatever you want about Five Nights at Freddy's, but you can't deny the effect that it's had on the horror industry. The franchise had its ups and downs for sure, but its simple mechanics and complex story inspired countless other game makers to expand the mascot plushy horror genre, for better or for worse.
Oh my god! Jesus Christ!
And it's kinda crazy that all this came from one guy who, despite failure after failure, managed to completely turn his life around through sheer determination. Scott's journey lit the path for more developers to take, kickstarting several careers and letting loose new creative ideas into the world. All those games Mega mentioned at the beginning of Part 1, none of them would have existed without FNAF. And these aren't some mid-tier fan projects, these are actual fully fledged games. But none of them, not a single one, can hold a candle to the legacy of the big bear upstairs. But alas, all good things must come to an end. Sure, the lore still has some loose ends, but, well, what's the fun in having all the answers? Even with the end of the series, the mysteries left behind ensure that people will still come back to this beloved franchise. But, for Scott, it was time to rest. for the franchise, and for all of the years he had put into game development. This is the end of Five Nights at Freddy's.
Wait, what? What do you mean there's more? But the ending was perfect. Oh, this is some bullshit.